Hey guys, and welcome back for a new episode of the Know Your Formula 1 track series. This week is the São Paulo Grand Prix, also known as the Brazilian Grand Prix, and it is the third race in a row. We are racing at the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace, named after the Brazilian driver who won in 1975 but tragically passed away 2 years later in a plane crash. This track is often referred to as Interlagos due to its location. In Portuguese, Interlagos actually means between two lakes. This track was built pre-World War II in 1938, but the first F1 championship race was only in 1973. This track has been 4.3 kilometers long since 1990, but it's only half the size that it used to be before that. It is a short but technical circuit with 15 corners and 2 DRS zones. This track's unique layout and intense elevation changes have earned it a place amongst the most iconic circuits on the F1 calendar. The track's design follows the natural curves of the landscape, giving a roller coaster effect that drivers love but also find very challenging. It is also important to remember that this track is run counterclockwise, which increases the physical impact on the drivers. But the best way to understand the Brazilian track is to drive it, so let me jump into the sim and show you what a lap around the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace is all about. The lap begins with DRS open as drivers fly down the track's one and unique long straight before slamming on the brakes for turn 1, the site of many overtakes and crashes in the past. The downhill run through the Senna S begins the first major elevation change, which continues its descent all the way until turn 5. This short straight from turn 3 to turn 4 is the second DRS zone, and the braking zone here welcomes the opportunity for passing. Many infamous side-by-side battles start here and last through the next few turns. Turns 6 and 7 combine to make a fast, sweeping double apex turn, which quickly leads into the turn 8 braking zone. The downhill turn 9 left requires patience on the throttle before rocketing up towards 10, dashing to the left side and straightening the car before braking. It's okay to miss the apex and take a wide line through here. One more downhill blast and we're quickly upon turn 12, possibly the most important corner on the track to get the exit right out of. Drivers will avoid the curb on the entry even if it's not an issue in the game, and will use all of the exit curb in order to get on the throttle as early as possible and begin the climb towards 13, 14 and 15. It takes us back onto the main straight to finish a lap of Interlagos. The fastest race lap on this track is a 1:10.54 done by Bottas in 2018, but it is Hamilton who has the fastest qualifying lap with a 1:7.28. The most successful driver in Brazil is Alain Prost with 6 wins, but it is Schumacher who has the most victories on this track, specifically with 4 victories. But let's get back to the São Paulo Grand Prix. And if I had to choose one word to describe it, it would be dramatic. And first of all, the unpredictable weather in São Paulo can often create chaos during that race. São Paulo has a microclimate, which means that rain can come out of nowhere at any point in time. It often turns the race on its head and creates intense battles. And we all know what comes along with the rain are crashes. And crashes often lead to safety car, which means that the teams have to be ready for strategic shifts when it comes to tire management and pit stop strategy. This is also why it is not rare to see new faces on the podium in Brazil. And these are also the perfect conditions for exciting battles and memorable races. It actually created one of the craziest races in Formula 1 history back in 2003. That race would probably deserve its own video, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking out the highlights. That race was supposed to be 71 laps total, but because of the wet conditions and a damp track, the start of the race was actually behind the safety car, and the official start of the race was with 63 laps to go. During that race, 12 drivers ended up crashing or with mechanical issues. There's actually that insane image of turn 3 slowly becoming a cemetery of F1 cars. As I mentioned, there were multiple crashes during that race, but the most impressive one was the one of Webber slamming into the wall. And shortly after that, Alonso arrived on the scene of the crash and hit the loose tire from Webber's Jaguar. That projected him against the tire barrier, and it was such a scary crash. The red flag was brought out and the race was stopped after 54 laps only. Fisichella was initially declared as the winner of the race for his first ever win in Formula 1, but shortly after he started celebrating, the race was brought back to lap 53 before the incident, which actually gave Raikkonen the win. In that setting, Alonso finished third, but he wasn't able to go on the podium as he was still shaking up from the crash and still being under monitoring by the medical team. But the race didn't stop there. The deliberations continued, and it is 2 days later that the victory was handed back to Fisichella for his first and only victory in Formula 1. Another thing to consider in Brazil is the high altitude, just like in Mexico. Interlagos sits at 800 meters above sea level, which means that the air is thinner there. It impacts the engine power and the aerodynamics of the cars, reducing downforce. It also impacts air density, which means that the cars have a higher risk of overheating. Now, one more thing that makes the Brazilian Grand Prix often be dramatic is the fact that it is held towards the end of the season, which means that it often ends up being a title decider race. And of course, one that I cannot fail to mention is Hamilton's first ever championship title back in 2008. The battle for the championship against Massa was so close, and Massa was actually on pole position and went on to winning the race, but Hamilton only needed to be P5 on the grid in order to win the championship title. He did so in a very dramatic fashion by passing Glock on the very final lap of the race. It gave him 1 point advantage over Massa, and he took the championship for the year. Now, you may have heard in the news that this matter is actually in court right now due to the Crashgate scandal in Singapore that year. Basically, Piquet Jr. confessed to crashing on purpose during that race in order to help Alonso, but this was 2 years after the fact, and it was just too late to reverse the title. Now, one of the problems is that Massa lost a lot of places while pitting under the safety car because the fuel hose got stuck on his car, and he lost many places, which gave Hamilton the advantage. But the real issue is bigger than that, because it was 2 years after the fact, it was just too late to reverse the title. Now, one of the facts that came to light more recently is that F1 ex-boss Ecclestone revealed that he knew that Renault had cheated during that season. He should have cancelled the race and deleted the results, but in order to avoid a scandal in the sport, he just kept it quiet. Now, it is still too late for the championship to be turned over to another driver, but Massa is now trying to get a payout for the loss that it caused him. Another interesting battle for the championship was in 2012 between Alonso and Vettel. Now, Alonso knew that it would be tough, but he was hoping that the rain could maybe help him finish way higher on the grid than Vettel and give him a chance at the championship title. In qualifying, Vettel got 4th and Alonso got 7th. And Alonso got his wish with the rain coming out during the race, making it a pure chaos, a lot of overtakes, a lot of crashes, people spinning out, and he actually ended up at some point in the race in contention for the championship title, where he was high enough to make up for the difference in points against Vettel. It was a rollercoaster of emotions for the fan, no less than 147 overtakes during that race. However, Vettel never gave up and kept fighting and ended up in 6th position, which was just enough to put him 3 points ahead of Alonso for the championship title.
What is going through Fernando Alonso's mind here, Martin?
Now, there are just a couple more moments that I want to mention in this video, and the first one is in 1991 when Senna got his first ever win at his home Grand Prix after being stuck in 6th gear for most of the race. And it was just an unforgettable image. At the end of the race, you could see how much he struggled to get that car back to the pits. He was barely able to get himself out of the car, and he was just exhausted. And by the way, there are 4 Brazilian drivers who won Grand Prix at Interlagos, and it is Pace, Fittipaldi, Senna and Massa. And the other one that I wanted to mention is in 2016. It was another wet race, and we saw Max Verstappen start from 16 on the grid and finishing on the podium. Now, last year in 2023, we saw Max Verstappen take the win, followed by Norris and Alonso. Alright guys, it is prediction time, and for this week I'm gonna say that Leclerc will get the win, Sainz will be 2nd, and Max will be 3rd on the podium. I think the Ferraris have been very strong lately, and I think they're gonna continue to do so. I hope that the McLarens can be competitive, but we'll see what they can do this weekend. Don't forget to let me know what your predictions are in the comments below, and if you enjoyed watching, please give a like to the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.